Thank you. All right, I got a little too much credit here. So I appreciate the nice words, but so it's not just me writing code here. There's a lot of folks involved, and we have a pretty amazing team of people that do things. So thank you for all the credit, but we need to talk about Dave's and Josh's and all the other folks that really write a lot of code that we use. So with that, would you go up one? Hi, I'm Marco Peereboom. I'm the CTO of Company Zero. So that's really not the way we roll, though. So we are not really about titles and all that. So what it really means is that I am one of the guys that sits in a room and writes a whole bunch of code to make Decred run. So, and with that, let's just get started. So what I want to talk about today is about what Decred is, what it does, where we're heading, and how to Decred. And I'm going to try to do that in a little bit of human words. So when I use really complicated words, please stop me and tell me to explain a thing or two. So with that, would you go up one more? All right, so this slide I actually stole from Jake, who is the big boss of Decred. And it is a bit of a hard sentence to read, but I literally could not come up with a better way of describing what Decred actually is. So what I did is I took this slide and I'm going to actually break it down here in a little bit and explain to you what all these words mean, like proof of stake, governance, incentive changes. So we'll go over those as we progress through the presentation. So the thing that I really wanted to point out, though, is the reason why we started doing this is because of the bottom part of this slide that says Decred was created to address what we saw as a crisis of governance in Bitcoin. So we were very involved early on in Bitcoin, and we weren't always welcome, if you will. So some of the core developers did not like what we were doing, and they did not want a second daemon, which I always found a little bit silly. It's like saying that the internet would have been successful without having tens or even hundreds of TCP/IP implementations. That is just not the way it works. The more implementations you have, the more robust you're going to be. So we noticed very early on that there was some friction between people who wanted to help and participate in the Bitcoin space and the core developers who were hoarding all the marbles, if you will. So with that, can we go to the next one? So. And the reason we really embarked was because we felt that there needed to be also a mechanism to generate tension between stakeholders and, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So balance tension between stakeholders in the infrastructure operators. So the way Bitcoin works is that a lot of power, most of the power resides with the miners. They can pretty much do whatever they want, right? Because they are the only ones who have write access to the blockchain. So if they don't like something, they don't have to roll with it. And again, that did not feel right. In 2013, when everybody was still singing Kumbaya, that was not a real issue. But as we have seen recently with SegWit and bigger blocks and all those other things, it has become pretty contentious. So you have Twitter wars, Reddit wars, and nothing essentially happens. So what we were trying to do in Decred is to make sure that the stakeholders, so people that actually play, do have a vote in how things are going to be executed in the future. So that is our big feature that we developed on top of Bitcoin. Should we get up on one? All right, and now we're going to bring it a little bit back to earth and see if we can explain some of these big words. So I don't know the expertise level in here. I assume we have a bit of a mix here, so I'm just going to go briefly over these 4 bullets, and then I'll dive into them a little bit. So we're going to talk a bit about infrastructure, who they are and what they do, what their incentive structure is, and we're going to repeat that for the other 4 bullets as well. Can you go one more? So infrastructure. So everybody has heard of miners, right? So miners are these people that have these giant computer farms that sit there all night, all day, trying to solve a little puzzle. So that little puzzle is worth a lot of money, so there's a lot of folks involved in that particular thing, and they keep doing this. So the decentralized network nodes, so those are all the machines that are sitting on the internet that are participating in validating the blockchain and making sure that everything is operating correctly. Go up one more. So stakeholders. Stakeholders in Decred are folks that own Decred and folks that actually have what we call skin in the game. So they are invested and interested in having a well-working system that will continue to operate and prevent bad things from happening in the future. So this is a very important portion of Decred. This is actually what makes it tick, is this thing that allows anybody who owns Decred to participate in the community and make actual decisions. Can you go up one more? So proof of stake, what that means is this is where the rubber really meets the road. So what that means is that the way our governance system works is we put the code dormant inside the daemon. A lot of words. What does that mean? So it means that we actually preload the software to be ready to execute. So when you vote on something, you are going to vote to enable it or disable it. It's not a signal saying, hey, we would like this feature in the future, maybe. It's ready. If it gets voted in, activate it. If it doesn't get voted in, gets not activated. And then it can be removed from the code. So the other thing that it provides is a validation mechanism. So if you would have, I'm going to use a couple of technical terms here, but if you would have a rogue miner that was doing bad things, in Decred, the stakeholders can say, you know what, I don't like this block, and we are going to not validate it. And what that would mean, what that would do is actually prevent those blocks from progressing on the blockchain. And therefore, there's a very strong disincentive for bad actors to continue this because it's going to be prohibitively expensive to move forward, to move the chain forward. One more. So governance. So this is the big thing that we're working on right now. So a portion of this has been written. The other portion is still under active development. But the idea is that we're going to have a two-tiered voting system. The one I alluded to a little bit earlier. So the signaling system where people show their desire for a new feature or for marketing budget. And then we're going to move on to a hard fork voting. So hard forking, I will actually get into that in a little bit here, but that basically means that you're going to change the rules of the game. And changing the rules of the game is bad, normally. That's a lot of Bitcoin folks start shuddering. They're like, no, we don't want that. We actually actively embrace it because that is what's going to make us resilient in future-proofing the system. So if something bad would happen, let's say one of the algorithms gets hacked or cracked and people know ways around it, what we can do very quickly is change that out, put it up for a vote, and we have a built-in mechanism today to actually switch. For example, I'm just making it up, we use Blake 256 as one of our digest algorithms. We could shift to a SHA-512. And that's pretty powerful because that gives us the ability to future-proof our code, and if there's an eventuality, we can actually react pretty quickly to that as well. So I have to say the word Politeia, or else marketing people are going to yell at me, so I'm going to do that. That is the name of our governing system. And like I said, that's still under development. It's going to drop here pretty quickly. All right, so I borrowed this little slide, or at least the text from Charlie Lee. I really liked this analogy. So what is forking? So forking is when the chain goes in multiple directions. So, but this is a really good analogy. So let's say that everybody is creating toy cars, right? So everybody has let's say there's 10 factories and everybody is making toy cars. Now at one point, some guy decides, you know what, I want to make a toy truck. So, so if you're the only one who shows up with a toy truck and the rest of the people are still doing toy cars, something bad could happen, right? Especially if you all agreed on, toy cars is what we're doing. So, and again, so let's go talk about the Decred version of this. So if the network is signaling, you know what, we want to switch from making toy cars to making toy trucks, we can handle that because we have this hard forking mechanism, and therefore we can say, hey, you know what, if 75% of all the manufacturers have switched from toy cars to toy trucks, we are going to be able to switch the entire system over. And that's exactly what we do. So people vote, if we achieve 75% of the voters to support making toy trucks, then it would flip over. Can you go to the next one? So, and I talked about this a little bit earlier as well, and this is a pretty big deal. So there's a lot of fighting going on within Bitcoin at this point, and people have different ideas than the miners do, and vice versa. So the miners are incentivized to dump Bitcoin as quickly as they can mine it, because they bought these server farms, they have a bunch of equipment, so they need to get their money out quickly to pay back for the investment. The owners, on the other hand, they really want the coin to be stable and, you know, and to mine blocks quickly so you can make payments and all that. So there's a little bit of a the incentive is perverse, if you will, between the Bitcoin miners and the community. So, for example, actually a better example is the size of the block. So the size of the block is a big deal in Bitcoin, because the smaller the block, essentially, the bigger the fees are going to be. So that's great for the miners, but that's not great for you if you want to, you know, send a transaction to the other side of the world, because you have to apply bigger and bigger fees to get included and to be part of, to become, you know, to get mined. So, and we are, again, going to be able to actually have a vote about, let's say, the block size. And even though it would be very, very contentious from a miner versus stakeholder perspective, let's assume that the stakeholders have more stake and therefore can vote it in. And so contentious issues would be resolved. So another thing that I think the folks that really follow this know is that there is a lot of, no, there's actually, I'm saying it wrong. There's a lot of noise being generated by a small group of people. So there's a lot of really vocal people that make seem that something is very contentious, and it may not be at all. But if those are the only voices people hear, you may not, you know, figure out or know that it's actually not a contentious issue at all. So with Decred, you can resolve all this on chain by voting, because by voting, people are actually, you know, saying this is what we want, and therefore there is. Everybody can, you know, yell and scream as much as they want. It is not going to matter. One more. All right, I got to introduce you guys to Stakey. Stakey is our mascot, and somebody put a lot of thought into this, though, about what the fork means and the shield and the prize. It's a really, actually, a very cute visual representation of how our staking system works, and it's actually pretty accurate. So I don't want to read the slide to you, but there is, when you participate in voting, there is an incentive. So you actually get paid to vote. So what that does is that people that are active in our system and the people that are actively staking, they actually get paid to play. So that incentivizes a community that gets engaged. So that's really, really good. So the shield represents that it protects the blockchain, and that's accurate as well, because every block is validated by the stakeholders. So the ticket is obvious, right? So that's how you vote, and then the fork signifies the hard fork voting that we have embraced and can execute on a dime. All right. So what are we going to be up to? So we're going to work on Politeia, which is our governance system. So if you guys, I'll answer all the questions about that here in a second. So we're going to have some pretty exciting privacy enhancements, and what that's going to do is going to enable you to send your Decred funds wherever you want in the world without everybody tracking you. So, and before everybody says, but that's illegal and all that, no. So sometimes there is a legitimate reason that you don't want to know where funds go to. If you want to, if you have a favorite political party that you want to donate to, not everybody should be, you know, privy to that information. So we're actively working on payment integrations so that we can end up with a widget on a website, so people can actually accept Decred here. So that is one of the things that we're hoping is going to take off here pretty soon. Lightning Network is actually written and is being voted in right now, and it looks like we are going to pass that vote, and then we're going to have Lightning Network available. We are still working really hard on the DAO stuff. DAO is the Digital Autonomous Organization. And the idea there is we are going to release our dev funds to the DAO once the code is ready, and that will actually put the power in the people's hands. So folks are going to be able to write up a proposal and actually get funding for that proposal based on folks that have voted for or against that proposal. So in other words, you can say, I would like to develop this feature, here's a spec, and I need 50,000 US dollars to do this feature, and I'm going to take 7 months to develop it. So then we can do a payment schedule that is going to be ratified by the stakeholders to disburse this money if the contractor is going to make forward progress on the feature that he's developing. So again, this is still not done complete yet, but it is under development. So lastly, I would like to point out that we have a very exciting competition coming up here in Austin. We're doing to do let's call it a Shark Tank-like idea, where people can come with uses to use Politeia in the governance system. So bring us a good idea, and you might win a pretty big prize. So Jay-Z helped me out here. I think it's $10,000 is the number one prize, $5,000 for the number two, and $2,000 for the number three, and those will be paid out in Decred. So if you have a great idea, you go check out the competition rules and get in on it. And with that, so I went pretty quickly here because I saw that clock just moving down. What's the question? Yes, sir.
What is the plan to get Decred adopted? Like who do you envision using Decred? Like there's 1,000 coins out there. Why should somebody pick Decred over, say, a Dash or a Pivx or one of the other coins out there? Who are you going after as a user?
Right. So the question is, why pick Decred over the numerous other coins that are out there? So what I would say our biggest differentiator is that we have a bunch of tech that is active today. So it's not a promise. The code that's out there is out there, and we typically do not make announcements until code has actually been written and is going to become active. So we are a very active development team, and we try to do things right. So that is one prong. So the other prong is that I think that our governance system is actually superior to others at this point. I think we're a little bit ahead of the game here, and that will enable people to really get involved. So if you want to be really involved in your cryptocurrency, and you want to participate, and you want to make decisions, Decred is the place where you can actually do that. And again, the difference being is that it's not signaling, no, it's going to be activated. So the code is going to get activated. It's not going to be optional. So it's a binding vote.
Does that mean that if the code can be activated, that means it's already been written, which means it's, in a sense, a lot of it's already been decided?
That is correct. So there's portions that are that important that need to be decided up front, and the code just has to be written. And then at that point, it just needs to be ratified, right? So people are going to vote for it or not. So this is where the second tier of voting is also going to come in. That is, if the community gets to vote on a proposal and say, okay, you know what, this proposal is a little silly, we're going to vote that down. So that gives you a pretty good indicator if people actually are interested in it. Does it make sense? Right. So there is the idea is that we get a signal and an indicator saying this is going to probably be a good idea, and therefore we are going to write it.
And I guess my big question is, who decides that it's a good idea? You see what I'm saying? Whereas the community hasn't written the code, there's kind of a core team that's written this code, and then is kind of saying, okay, now community, you can vote on this code that we've written, but then kind of there's an implicit sense that you should say yes to this because look, we've done all this great work for you. And maybe that's important at this stage, and that transitions in the future.
So So let me see if I can recap that.
You have this choice. You're giving them a choice, right? You're saying like, you can vote on this. We've already written it.
No, so the initial proposal system is going to require people to write the proposal, come up with the disbursement of funds, right?
I see. So there's this undercurrent that gets it to that stage.
Right. So you have to go shop your idea around already. So there's going to be this, this is really crazy in the internet era, but you probably going to have to speak to a human at some point, right? So you got to put your phone down and actually have that conversation. No, but that's exactly right. So we are going to force, quote unquote, people to shop the idea. Because if you just put it out there, it's probably not going to get any attention, right? So, but if you go around and say, you know what, I come up with this thing, here's my proposal. Hey guys, hey Twitter, hey Facebooks, right? Is this cool? Is this not a good idea? And then the stakeholders again are the folks that own Decred. So they get made aware that there's a new proposal out there. So they can then go look at it, read through it and say, yeah, I don't like this. Or, hey, that's a great idea. So I will support this. Yes, sir. Oh, no. So we've been live for over 2 years at this point. I want to say almost 2 years. Over. Yeah. So we launched in February 8th, 2016. I got the number right. So we've been around for a while. We've been dealing with Bitcoin prior to that. So I think we got involved, I want to say in 2011 is when we actually got active, or 2012, when we got active in the space. So we wrote BTCD. We dealt with that for a while, and then we had a little company that we did that is no longer around. But we've been active in this space, and then I want to say in 2013 is when we started developing Decred. We're going to do this. We think this is an important project, and we developed that until we dropped the code out to the community. So it was already written and working the day it went out. So not a promise. Maybe something later. No, it's here today. Hard forking voting that I was talking about is here today. So this gentleman was first.
What is your thinking with regard to other chains either potentially adopting some of the ideas you guys are actually implementing and then moving on, and or sort of this intra-chain infrastructure that's happening? How do you guys see that sort of post-execution of what you guys already have in your plan, and then what's that new world look like, and what's the Decred kind of vision?
Well, so obviously we want to get there first, right? So so we are actually, if you want to have an end goal defined today, is we are going to be able to give the people a mechanism to have a digital corporation, if you will, a corporation that can be run by its stakeholders using blockchain technology. So that would be our short-term goal that we would like to achieve. Does that make sense though? So that's where we want to get to, is having a functioning DAO. All our code is going to be open source, as it always has been. So folks are going to be able to take that code and generate their own virtual corporations. So nobody knows what this means, right, in the future. There's going to be a lot of change. There's going to be a lot of exciting new features. And we're ready. We would love to see where folks are going to take this code and what they'll do with it. So the question was, how many stakeholders do we have? I don't think we have a number. What I do know is that we have, I want to say currently there's 50% of the coins are staked. Is that about right? Yeah, so, okay, but around 45% is what has been told. So, so folks that own Decred have been staking pretty actively. Again, there's a very nice return. So I think that currently the return is about 2% per month or so. So if you know how compound interest works, that's a pretty hefty number. So it literally pays to play. So if you are participating and you are voting and you're playing along, you can make a pretty good return. Yeah, go ahead.
Is the number of coins capped on coin market cap that used to list 6.4 million? And are there, is there a gas kind of component to this that's leaked out every month?
So the question is there a cap? So we have actually the same cap as Bitcoin, it's 21 million total. Currently we are at about 6 million mined, so we are still decades away from being done mining though. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah, and mining then is done by the staking.
No, so actually, I guess I didn't go into enough detail there. So the question was, mining's done by staking. No, so we are a hybrid proof of work, proof of stake blockchain. What that means is that we still have the miners who mine and do their puzzle solving, and they get rewarded for that. So then there is a proof of stake component, and those are the people that vote on validity of the blocks that were mined, and also on the agendas, the ones that will hard fork the thing. So, and then the block reward is split up between the proof of stake, proof of work, and the DAO fund. So 10% of the block reward always goes to the DAO, so and that's going to be the money, by the people, for the people. And then I want to say 30% is stakeholders, and then the remainder goes to the miner.
Any plans to do, so I assume what you have right now is the Decred is a Bitcoin implementation. Any plans to do other coins, such as maybe a side chain of Ethereum? Is that sort of dependent on the success of this experiment?
So the question is, are we going to support side chains and other crazy things? Not this second. So we have not quite. I actually honestly don't know if somebody is working on that. So I just don't know. I have no answer for that. So what I can tell you though is that we did do the atomic swaps, which is a very big deal, which is going to help folks to exchange coins between themselves, right? It's going to kind of eliminate the exchanges. So that is very exciting, and that's where we're going to have some intra blockchain, call it contamination. But I cannot answer your question, actually. I just don't know. Yes, sir.
What's the number one feature you want to see within the government's policies?
Actually, I'm not going to tell you because I'm going to try to win that prize. That is actually an honest answer because I have a really good idea. So I'm not going to shop it yet. Yes, sir.
Where can I spend Decred, and what are the plans or goals for having more places for me?
So we are actively working on payment integration. So we are trying really hard to get widgets up on websites. So pay with Decred over here. So we're trying to integrate with different wallets. So we're doing all the things that you typically hear of. There are actually places. So Jay-Z, help me out. Was it Overstock that? Oh, everywhere it takes shapeshift, you can actually use Decred. Okay, so I guess that's a much more generic and bigger answer. Yes, sir. Sure. It's as simple as it gets. It's who wants to buy and who wants to sell, right? So it's a pure market driven price.
Doesn't that mean that when no one knew about Decred, the ticket prices were low, and so people got to stake a lot cheaper than people get?
So that is exactly right. So now that Decred is becoming more well known, the ticket price has been steadily rising. It's been creeping up, right? Because it is literally supply and demand. So we also have a limited amount of coins available. The thing though is that we want to keep the ticket price very close to 41,000. And what, 41,000? So the number, what that does is that gives every stakeholder a 99.5% chance of actually voting, so that your ticket is not going to get expired and then you don't get your reward. So we work really hard to stay right at that number. So if more people show up, and obviously the price has to go up so that people are disincentivized from buying more and therefore driving up the price more. So we're trying really hard to stay at that number. So, but the more participants, it's going to drive up the price. It's just no ifs and buts. Yes, sir.
Are you doing atomic swaps just in Decred, or are you doing cross-currency?
It's cross-currency, so it's Litecoin and Decred, Bitcoin and Decred, and so.
That's on your own platform?
Sorry?
Is that on the Decred platform?
It's actually on all the platforms. We have made the code available for people that that want to do the swaps. They can do in 2 days between various coins. So currently the biggest limit is that if you support the Bitcoin scripting, you can make this work pretty easily. So it's going to be a little bit harder to make to work with like a Monero that has a different mechanism there. Does that make sense? So currently it's command line and it's being integrated inside our wallets. So the idea is that we are going to be able within your wallet, create the transaction that would do the atomic swap. Which is obviously very exciting. People should be happy. Why are y'all not dancing? Yes, sir.
I think I understand like the concept of an atomic swap, which means that trustlessly exchanging value between two different blockchains.
Right.
I'm having a hard time just understanding technically what that means. What in the middle is making that transfer happen?
That is a very long question. Yeah, so if you want to talk in detail about that, come find me afterwards. And actually then I'll walk you to Dave, who actually wrote the code. He's manning our booth right now. Dave will bore you to tears about this stuff, but you will understand it. He will not leave you alone until you understand it. He will beat it into you. No, but what it means though is that there is a lot of cryptography going on behind it, right? And what you are going to do is you're going to basically have a collision that you can make, a known collision. So everybody ends up with the same number on both chains, right? And if those numbers match, now you can actually make the transfer. But both of them have to do it, right? So when one validates, it automatically activates the other end. That's why it's atomic, right? So again, I'm not going to go too much into detail on this one, but come find us at the booth and we'll help out on that. Who else has a question? Yes, sir. Yes, on both chains. Yeah, so the side that initiates. Well, but both of them are initiating, right? So the person doing the Bitcoin portion pays the Bitcoin fees. The one doing the Decred portion pays the Decred fees. So, but you do have to pay because it's just a transaction essentially, right?
Do they have to have a Lightning network? So does that network have to have a Lightning component, or can it be against
So the question is, does atomic swaps require Lightning? The answer is no. So it works today. So obviously, once the transaction has been made, it has been made, right? So it's just going to mature over time, and then you're going to be able to get to those coins. But they are actually atomic, so it flips. But no need for Lightning on that.
Can you explain the ticketing system a little bit more, how it locks up? Is a fixed number of tickets available that you can buy?
So the question is there a fixed number of tickets? So no, but we really want it to be 41,000. And again, that's the number that I explained earlier, right? So we want to be at 99.5%. So, and that is a magic number, I get that, right? So it's hard to, so why do you come up with that? And again, it's just the math, right? The math worked out to that. So we wanted to have 5 tickets per block, right? So there's 5 votes per block that do certain things. And there's so many blocks are going to get, every 5 minutes we have a block, right? So you add it all up together and that's, okay, 41,000 is the ideal number for us. So, but that's really it. And at that point we are, so the algorithm works in a way, the more people show up, the quicker the price rises, right? If people start disappearing, the price drops. And the idea is that we keep that as level as possible. And in fact, actually, let's talk about that for a second. So we had an algorithm that was a little too greedy, so it would shoot up too high and drop down too quickly. And that was actually causing some folks, so actually it caused an incentive for the miners to turn off all the mining power when the prices were high, and then turn everything back on when it was low. So we had this really hugely oscillating ticket price, which was not good for the community, because they would literally shoot up to 200 Decred, and then drop back down to 40, and it was just crazy. So we changed the algorithm around to be much more stable, to have the oscillation patterns. And that, so the miners didn't like that at all. But again, they didn't, so they could have voted, but no, they've been dumping their Decred, so they couldn't. Does that make sense? Any other questions?
Time for 1 or 2 more. Yes, Jay.
So you're forged from BTCD.
Yes.
Are you pulling in the BTCD is following the core, right?
Yes.
So let me ask you this: do you have SegWit in Decred? Is there like a gap, or is it like
So
following core?
Yeah, so the question is, does Decred still follow BTCD? So the easy answer is yes. The hard answer is you can't always do that. It doesn't always make sense. So maybe. How's that? So portions are definitely up to the second. SegWit is going to be a little bit different for us. The way we make our blocks, there is going to be a variation of SegWit that we are going to do, but it's going to be the same idea, just implemented a little bit differently. So that portion is not going to be identical. Does that make sense? Right. So it's
Really, I'm asking, it's not so much segregated witness as all the things that got bundled up under that name, like malleability fixes.
right. So again, yes. So yes, maybe it depends really. So we try to keep up with core. It's pretty hard, right? Because they have such a large team and so many people working on it. So we are not always exactly current, but we do try to keep BTCD updated. So there's a lot of folks actually out there, businesses that rely on BTCD still. So you don't want to abandon them, right? So we have been, and a lot of folks actually have been writing these features for us, right? And we just basically get these PRs. But if it's something complicated like Lightning, so I want to see Roast Beef wrote that over months worth of time, right? So but then we had to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. There were some issues, right? We fixed them. And now it's, in both ends. So it varies. But the idea is that BTCD is still the core. And then we actually, when we make changes to both products, we tend to do it in BTCD first and then merge it into the DCR code.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So how has the team evolved? How many people do you have involved? And do you guys take a philosophy of a fully distributed team or more having people in one city so they work closely together? Just curious to hear your philosophy.
Okay. Yeah, so the question is about the philosophy of the development at Decred.
Really, I just wanted a sticker.
Okay. Well, the stickers are easy, and she'll be happy to hand them out. No, so but the question was what do you guys do on development, right? So how do you organize yourselves? So we are completely decentralized. Imagine that. It's part of the name. No, but we're actually real serious about that. So there is a very limited amount of folks that actually can work and should work on consensus code. And those folks are kind of hard to come by, and they're hard to find. So whenever you find them, you hire them wherever they want to be. So if you want to be in Michigan, that's the right place for that person. That's where we're going to hire you. So you hire talent where you find it. So we have a couple of folks that work for Company Zero. That's the one that actually got Decred up and running. But currently we are trying to hire people that are contractors, and we are trying to actually pay them in Decred. And we've had some pretty good success with that. So we've picked up, I want to say, tens of folks that are actively now developing Decred that basically are paid in Decred, and they play in our distributed development organization.
So how large is the Decred team? Like, what's the head count?
So I want to say that we have about 20 to 25 active developers at this point. So it's a fair-sized team, and people are all over the place. But people work also, the ones that are not salaried work on things that interest them, right? So if there's an interest in working on that, and that's what you want to do, you get to do that, right? Because you are dedicating your hours, and you say, okay, I'm going to fix this issue, or I'm going to write this feature. Does that make sense?
All right. Thank you, Marco. That's all the time we've got.